pull the stat out, I have to leave it literally
Yeah, so we.
because I decided to take more money.
Hey guys.
Or something, go straight into.
Like 20
Hi guys. How are y'all? Everybody good? Yeah.
Phenomenal.
Thank you guys for joining us. Appreciate it. We were told not to have cheese cubes and water for lunch because that didn't count. So we got barbecue, so you guys can like get the food coming and then try to go back to work, all the fun stuff. Yeah. So thank you guys for coming out. My name is Lloyd. This is Marcus Arguez, and appreciate your time today. Hopefully we can be a little useful, a little helpful, maybe talk about some things that maybe you know, maybe you don't know, maybe you can teach us some things, who knows. So, but yeah, I'm gonna kick it off and I'm going to talk for a few minutes, Mark's going to talk, and then at the end we'll open it up for questions and conversation if you guys want. And again, just really appreciate you guys being here. I'll tell you a little bit about myself. So I own businesses for 25 plus years. I was an EO member for several years. Most of my forums started bailing out, and I live almost up in Denton, and I got really tired of driving to Dallas for events. And I just felt like I was already working 80 hours a week. It wasn't really fair in my life to spend more nights away, so I wasn't in EO, but my forum is kind of hung together as a bit of a rogue forum. People love to hear that. So anyway, we still kind of hang out, and now that we've been sponsoring, it's been really great for me. Like I've loved being around business owners again. It's just been very refreshing, and I forgot how great and fun some of the conversations can be, just the people. And I think as business owners, you just understand each other. Business is business at the end of the day. So I'm going to hide over here in the corner so I can still read my notes because I'm blind and I need them. So yeah, I'm going to talk a little bit about AI. So before we get started, I'm curious how many people have used AI this week? Perfect. How many have used AI today? Perfect. Me too. I mean, I use AI all the time. I use it for research, brainstorming, writing, meeting preparation, summarization information. I think AI is one of the most powerful tools that we've obviously ever seen. And so this is not an anti-AI presentation. It started that way, and I was told that was a bad idea. And then I realized it was a bad idea because I realized how much I use AI on a daily basis. So we kind of switched gears on it. So, I mean, I believe really, in fact, that the future kind of belongs to people who learn how to leverage and use AI well. But I also believe that AI struggles with three things that matter tremendously, especially in the business and financial world: facts, context, and human behavior. And those three things happen to be where I think great advisors come into play. So let's start with facts. So one of the biggest risks with AI, in my opinion, is something called the AI hallucination. We're all familiar, right? An AI hallucination occurs when AI creates information that sounds completely believable, but is actually false. It's not misleading, it's not partially wrong, it is completely made up. And the scary part is that it sounds just as confident when it's wrong as when it's right. So real world example. So you guys maybe have all read this story, but back in 2023, there was 2 attorneys that used ChatGPT to assist with their legal research. So the AI they used, it generated multiple court cases, citations looked legitimate, the formatting looked legitimate, everything appeared professional. So the attorneys submitted these citations to federal court. The problem was the cases didn't exist. They were completely fabricated by AI. The judge later discovered the issue. The attorneys were sanctioned and fined. So think about that. These weren't inexperienced people. These were professional, trained attorneys. And the lesson isn't that lawyers are dumb. Some of them are. But the lesson is that confidence and accuracy are not the same thing. And I think AI can sometimes blur that line. So why should we care as business owners? So let's make this practical. So if AI tells me the wrong restaurant to go to in Dallas, like, look, I'm out $50, maybe $100. If it gives me a bad vacation recommendation, maybe I'm out a few $1,000. But what happens if AI gives me bad tax guidance, or succession planning guidance, or estate planning guidance, or bad business sale guidance? So Now we're talking about mistakes that could cost tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, maybe even millions of dollars. So the higher the stakes, the more important that the accuracy becomes. But here's the bigger issue. Honestly, I don't think that the AI hallucinations are the biggest problem. I think context is. Because even when AI gives a technically correct answer, it can still give wrong advice. So this is something that I did with, I used Claude, Perplexity, and ChatGPT, and I put in the exact same question. I said, as a business owner, should I invest $500,000? That's it. And the answers were all over the map. Some similarities here and there, but most of them started with, historically, stocks outperform cash over long periods. Okay? I mean, it's true. Historically, they do. But is that the right answer? I mean, maybe. Maybe not. I think the more important question would be the questions that it didn't ask, like, what should I do with the money? The first question should be, why do you have the money? Why do you have $500,000 sitting in cash? I mean, are you buying another company, planning to sell your business? Are you building reserves, funding a buy-sell agreement, preparing for a tax event, protecting against a downturn, supporting aging parents, helping children, managing concentrated risk? The investment question may actually be the least important question. The real issue, again, is context, and context changes everything. So some of you probably think like, hey, Lloyd, look, I got this. I understand AI better than you, and so I've trained my AI. It knows all about my business, my goals, my family, my finances, my tax returns, my estate documents. And look, that's fantastic. I mean, you're probably getting better answers than 90% of the people out there, maybe 99% of the people. But I'd still argue there's a gap because AI only knows what you tell it. And a great advisor often discovers the things that you didn't think to tell it. So what's the value of great questions? So think about the best mentor you had, like the best EO forum mate that you've ever had, best coach, consultant. Why were they valuable? Was it because they always had the answers? I mean, no, probably not. It's usually they were valuable because they asked the questions that you weren't asking yourself. Questions that expose the blind spots, questions that change your thinking, questions that helped you see things differently. The challenge isn't always just getting answers. The challenge is knowing what questions to ask. So I'll tell you in my own experience, so again, 25 years, I own nightclubs, bars, restaurants, HVAC and plumbing companies. I tried it all. And, look, I made a lot of decisions. I made some really good decisions, and I made some really terrible decisions. So, and I look back at the biggest mistakes that I made, and almost none of them happened because I lacked information. And most of them happened because of the blind spots. I mean, I was just too close to the situation. And if I were being honest, I think that's why I've always loved EO. Like I said, I've stuck around my forum guys, and those are the guys that I lean on the most when I want to talk about business. And now being back involved as a sponsor has been really cool because I've met a lot of other great business owners and been able to actually lean on them for some advice and things like that. Because I think successful people still need perspective. So AI has read about it, and as humans, we've lived it. So over the years, I've watched business fail, partnerships fall apart, owners become disabled, families lose loved ones unexpectedly, business sales collapse, dude, I'm gonna get my words out today. Holy crap. Didn't have enough coffee today. So tax mistakes become incredibly expensive, and AI has read about all those situations. But experienced advisors have actually walked through them with those people, with real people. And one is information, and the other is experience, and both matter. But they're not the same thing. So this is where I think the research gets pretty interesting. So one of the most respected studies in our industry came from Vanguard. And their research suggests that advisors can add significant value over time. But here's the more surprising thing. The value wasn't primarily stock picking, it wasn't market timing, it wasn't finding the next hot investment. The biggest drivers were behavioral coaching, tax efficiency, planning, withdrawal strategies, helping people avoid emotional decisions, helping people avoid mistakes, helping people stay disciplined. So in other words, helping humans behave like humans. One of my biggest problems, and this is probably my favorite point of this whole deal, is that AI doesn't push back. AI generally answers the questions that you ask. A great advisor sometimes challenges the question it asks, or the question itself. So maybe you're asking, how do I invest money? When the real question should be, should I be taking this risk at all? Maybe you ask, how do I save taxes? And the real question should be, have I protected my family? Maybe you're asking, how can I grow faster? When the real question is, how much is enough? So sometimes the most valuable advice isn't the answer, it's the pushback. So how do we use AI? So as financial advisors and wealth managers, I mean, we use AI all the time. Research, meeting prep, summaries, organization, efficiency, identifying opportunities, following up faster. AI makes us better prepared. It makes us more efficient, helps us serve our clients better. But AI is still a tool. It's an incredibly powerful tool, but it's not a replacement for judgment. So I'll leave you with this. So AI can help you find answers faster than ever before. But I think the biggest risk in business rarely comes from lack of information. Again, it comes from blind spots. And blind spots are hard to see by yourself, and that's why I think EO exists. That's why coaches exist. That's why mentors exist. That's why advisors exist. But sometimes the most valuable thing in the room isn't the answer. It's the person asking the question that you never thought to ask. And the crowd goes crazy. That's it. That's my 2 cents for the day. Now I'll let much smarter, more handsome, and younger Marcus Arguez talk about this.
Awesome. Thanks, Ash. Thanks, Lloyd. I'm going to talk a little bit different. Some of the stuff has AI integrated in it automatically, but really these are more strategic things that we can implement for clients that I think you guys might get a lot out of. If you want to go through this. And so talking through some of the things, we keep getting questions over and over from EO members about estate planning. I think it's probably the area that I see the most consistent gap in financial planning for business owners. And so the big objectives is, most of you guys have businesses. Businesses are usually growing because you're in EO and EO does a good job supporting you and helping you grow. And so really the question is, what do I do with all this money? Because I'll probably die with something. And so objectives generally of estate planning is we want to control wealth while you're alive and while you're deceased. The big hurdle that we see is a lot of people don't want to do estate planning because they assume that means giving up control of assets. And it can, but it certainly doesn't need to be the case. We also want to minimize taxes and settlement costs. Generally speaking, if you guys have ever been through probate with somebody, you've done some estate planning, not only is it expensive, but it's also taxing on your attention and your time and your energy. And so if we can make these processes easier when you're potentially dealing with somebody's death, that makes life a little bit smoother. And then the last thing is protect your wealth from division and lawsuits. A large portion of wealth that's lost is lost a few different ways. One, it's split up over and over again among generations. So instead of having all your wealth accumulated into one trust, for example, it's split among, if you have 3 kids and they each have 3 kids, well, now there's fractionally a lot less wealth per human in the family. And then also lawsuits, not only from, inside of the family, children suing each other and things like that. It gets pretty ugly sometimes with family and money, but also lawsuits externally. Anytime you go through probate, generally speaking, that's going to be public record. And now everyone knows if there's a dollar sign with your name attached to it, how much they should sue you for. And so there's some really simple things here that estate planning helps mitigate. I have a client right now who's going through this. He had a company truck. He runs a pretty large HVAC company. He had a company truck that an employee of his was driving. gets in a car accident, and he just got hit with a $2.5 million lawsuit. And so he's freaking out, think he's gonna be okay, but he's freaking out regardless, right? And so the more of this stuff we can plan around, I think he's got a lot of the business structure in place to where he's gonna be fine. But that could have happened to you personally, right? You can get in a car accident and someone can sue you as an individual instead of a business entity. And so, Emily, you want to keep going through this? And so these things are really important in terms of how do we structure our life and make sure we're protecting what you guys work so hard for. The big things that you guys should know about estate taxes, which is a big part of why we do this. The estate tax rate right now is 40%. You have a $15 million exemption per person. And so if you're married and you have planned properly, you really have a $30 million exemption, but you need to plan properly to use both of your exemptions. Most people don't, and so I would say functionally most couples have a $15 million exemption. And then you've got a $19,000 annual gift exemption per child, which means if you've got a child and you're married, you and your spouse can each give $19,000 to your kid every year without incurring an estate or a gift tax. And then obviously you have an infinite spousal exemption, right? So if you die, everything gets inherited by your spouse. You don't have to worry about paying taxes on that. Generally speaking, when we're talking about tax planning and trusts, anything like that, most of it is related to these four numbers. It's how do we maximize our exemption? If it's, hey, we're over the exemption, then how do we get things out of our estate at as little of a quote unquote value to the estate as possible? And so I think this is helpful for you guys to understand is this is the basis of tax planning in your estate is how do we manipulate some of these things legally to make sure we pay as little taxes as possible. The other thing that I see a decent amount is say, hey, I got a business, I'm worth $5 million, 45, I really don't need estate planning, right? I'm too young, or I'm not worth enough, and so it doesn't make sense, I'm fine with just a will. And by the way, virtually everybody should have a will. This is more so focusing on trusts, but the reality is if you grow at 4% net of inflation, taxes, and fees, you'll die with $37 million, which unless we have another crazy exemption hike like we had in 2026, you would end up paying taxes on the assets there. And so what we're showing here is probably you have a tax liability in that case of about $8.8 million. That was completely avoidable if you just started planning earlier, right? Relatively simple to get these things done, but a $5,000 or $10,000 estate plan could save you $8 million in taxes down the road. Benefits here, largely we avoid probate, helps manage money for minors. One of the things I've seen families do really successfully is, you have a bunch of money in trust. That's a great sort of carrot for your children and descendants to be better people. Let's make better beneficiaries, not worse because of the money. And so, we have a client that put together, we're putting together a trust for them. One of the objectives, he's a recovered drug addict, and he said, all my kids need to pass a drug test every year if they want to continue to benefit from the trust. And that was pretty easy to do. He also put in there some stuff about them being involved in the church, being really important to him. And so the goal for him was, hey, if you would have given me this kind of money at 20 years old, I probably would have killed myself. And hey, you never know how your kids are going to turn out. Obviously, we hope they all turn out phenomenal and use the money wisely. But I would probably fall into that category of, as an 18-year-old, I would not have spent money very well if I was inheriting a significant amount. So, other piece is irrevocable trusts help us avoid estate taxes, and then obviously we want to maximize the exemption. If you want to keep going through this. So without estate planning, let's say you pass away today and you're worth $20 million. First spouse dies, $20 million transfers to the surviving spouse. Second spouse dies, and you're going to pay $5 million is over that $15 million exemption. You pay a 40% tax on that, so you're paying a little bit over $1 million in taxes there, right? Once again, $1 million tax, that's 100% avoidable for a couple like this. You want to keep going? And this is really simple. We can set up a family and a marital trust. There's a whole bunch of different areas, different types of trusts that you guys might use. The other one that you see a lot, how many people here are like S Corp or in some type of corporation model for their business? Yeah, probably the majority. If that's the case, you can use grantor trusts, which is a specific type of trust that can hold S corp shares inside of the trust. Most trusts can't do that, right? And so slats are very typical. You'll see a lot of these things. There's a million different types of trusts, but generally speaking, they have the same objectives that we're trying to accomplish here. Other thing that we see a lot is, hey, we've got some ongoing tax liabilities, and how do we actually help people mitigate some of their taxes? The big ones that we see is, hey, I've got some capital gains I'm going to realize through a business sale, or there's some ongoing investments that I'm making that I'm continuing to accrue capital gains on. And so we put two strategies in here. This one is really about how we mitigate ongoing capital gains that you guys might be realizing. And so this is a concept called tax loss harvesting, where you start off, let's say you have $100,000 in an investment. That investment drops in value because the market changes and life happens. And so now that investment is only worth $75,000. So you would sell that, you would realize the $25,000 loss, and then you can reinvest that money with a $25,000 loss that you can carry forward into the future, right? One of the things that we use AI quite a bit for, and we want to keep going, is you can do this algorithmically inside of a portfolio. And so what we do is, in any given year, you'll see that something like 72 in 2021. 72 of the companies in the S&P 500 lost money that year, right? And so relatively easy for us to say, hey, whenever any of these companies start losing value, we can sell them, reposition the money. The total portfolio doesn't change very much because it's a diversified portfolio, but we can start to accrue some of these tax losses over time. The impact of this, which I think is pretty interesting, this is tracking the similar strategy from 2011 all the way through 2022, and $1 million would have had an excess return of about $200,000 over that period of time. So it's a net $200,000 in growth to the investor on the same $1 million, and that's net of fees and costs that are associated with this, right? So some of these things are really not complicated, but I do think you're seeing AI is and algorithmic trading obviously is very, very tied into that. Is helping advisors be more efficient with how we manage money and how we mitigate taxes for clients.
Are these bespoke AI systems or are they third-party AI systems? Or?
These would be bespoke. So basically, this is an AI. Is the only thing it does is tax loss harvesting inside of an existing portfolio.
Built by your
not built by us. There's a third-party company that does this for us. Yeah. And so here you see that really the portfolio performance is the same, but we get some outsized tax return through saving money, right? And I think this is important. There's a lot of things here that we also have AI influencing some of the research analytics that we do. We meet with wholesalers and other people like this that are constantly telling us these are the types of investments that they think make sense. And a lot of what we do is we try compiling all of that. We record basically every meeting now and compile that, and then we sort of use that as a helpful metric and a helpful summary tool for us to make investment decisions moving forward in client portfolios. The other things that I would tell you we're seeing a lot is, I think, like marketing. I was just talking to Vance about this, but marketing is a massive area of opportunity for AI because it's very good at producing images relatively quickly. And then I think research is a huge portion of how we're utilizing it. And then obviously inside of some of these things that would normally take a human quite a bit of time to do, you can build these things out to where they're happening pretty fast, and you have to do that to be effective in the market. I'm gonna keep going. And so this is a little bit of just sort of all the different things that we do that we can email this out to you guys. But I want to kind of open it up to questions. What questions, I guess, come up for me or for Lloyd? I didn't want to get super in the weeds on some of the AI pieces, but happy to sort of unpack any of those things if you guys had questions, or about wealth management and estate planning, whatever you guys have that comes to mind. Anything at all?
No way. I don't believe this at all.
wholesaler.
A wholesaler is what Vance used to do,
What's
right?
going on there? Where'd you get that question from?
He
Uh,
just mentioned it.
Yeah, a wholesaler is basically all these fund managers, BlackRock, American funds, name a really big financial institution. They've got guys like what Vance used to do, where they come to us and they say, here's why we're the best place to park your clients' dollars. And so they give us some fund insights, and they give us buy us some nice meals, and try and get us to say, hey, here's why you should give us the money that your clients have. And then that, obviously, with the information that they give us and sort of the compelling argument that they're trying to make, informs us as to how we should invest for clients. Yeah.
Social Security, you see that you can take it early, you can take it late, you read all this stuff on AI
Yeah.
about the good, bad, and ugly about that. What is your position on?
Generally, I think a lot of this is like specific to the person. Some people you'll see have very, very long family longevities, and it might make sense for them to defer Social Security. But a lot of times I think it's a choice of necessity. If a client needs the money, they need to start taking Social Security. Most of our clients don't necessarily rely on Social Security, and so they'll wait until they hit full Social Security age.
Which is,
67 is usually when people are, when it makes sense to start doing that. But it can, changes depending on if somebody dies early, if your parents passed away early, you might say, hey, I don't know if I expect to live that long. I've got a client who's a pilot, and he's convinced that he's gonna pass away early because a lot of radiation and all that kind of stuff. And so he's like, how old is he? He's 61. And he's like, I gotta retire today because he's convinced he's gonna die like 80 years old. By the way, like perfect health, doesn't have anything wrong with him, doesn't take any medications. And so some of that is, the math is important, what makes sense from an analysis perspective. But a lot of times it comes down to, I'm not gonna try convincing him that he's not gonna die early. Because if that's what he thinks, then let's let him take Social Security early. Yeah. The other thing that's a big challenge is if you make income, it really almost never makes sense to take Social Security. Just defer your Social Security until you're not making income. Because you get taxed at 50% if you're making enough income. So there's a lot of those things that maybe it's like a more nuanced, I hate giving the it depends answer, but it does. Generally speaking, people are going to be taking 67 as like a standard recommendation, but it can certainly change depending on life circumstances. Yeah.
What's the question you want us to ask?
What's the question you, maybe like, I can talk more about some of the business owner stuff that I think is really important. There's a lot of gaps that I see of like buy-sell agreements with partners, things like, is that funded? You actually have something in place in your operating agreement. And I think there's a lot of gaps there that we typically see. And so if you're saying, hey, what should I have in place around businesses, which is probably a question that you didn't ask, but that I'll ask myself. I think there's some structural pieces inside of your business that you should have in place that might not be our job. Maybe it's a corporate attorney's job, Bill, for those things in place. But they're really important, and we have clients that I've got a client. They own a four-partner law firm in Miami, and they're in the middle of suing each other over compensation and over how much equity they should have, and all that stuff. And all that started because a previous partner of theirs died. And so those things get ugly very fast. They've been in business like 15 years, and so it's pretty shocking. But these things happen all the time because we don't have things signed, and we're I don't know, litigious country, I suppose. But yeah.
Definitely litigious.
Yes.
Can we have a value stripping conversation?
Certainly.
What was the question, sorry? Can we have a value stripping conversation? In other words, we want to set up an ESOP in our organization for 40%, and that 40% is going to pay us over the next 10 years.
Sure.
Would it not be wise to set up a trust structure that holds the remaining partner's equity, where we can, instead of taking distributions, push it up in a more tax efficient amount?
Yes. What kind of business do you have?
A whole bunch.
Whole bunch.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is just one specific business.
No, it might be all of them, or it might just be one.
Okay. I mean, certainly you could use the trust to do that. Is there a specific question that you have?
How do I strip out the value of distributions as tax effective as possible? Is it pull it out personally and eat the tax consequence, or could we push it into a trust and leave it for the beneficiaries?
I would tell you, if you don't want to realize the income, these are S corps or how are they
So
established?
it's the S corp, C corp, LLC is irrelevant, right? I have an LLC, I have 50%, I'm going to carve out 40% to the employees.
Yep.
The employees are going to pay me over 10 years for that 40%. That 10-year payment is a variable expense because the value grows year on year. Now, that 40% is due to me and my partner.
Mhm.
If we pull it out as a distribution, we have a significant capital gain
Sure.
consequence. If we have a trust own the LLC instead of us,
Mhm.
and value stripped from the LLC to the trust, what is the tax consequence in that environment?
So you're saying if the LLC moved its shares inside of the trust
Correct.
instead of you taking the personal distribution? Yeah, that would not accomplish very much for you. The trust is still going to pay taxes on
Is it the same
income received.
percentage?
Yeah. And actually, sometimes trusts can be higher in taxes than your personal income. There you might want to do, I think, opportunity zone funds. There's some things there that can help. Opportunity zone funds, you can put money that you owe capital gains on. If it sits in the account for 10 years, they forgive all
Yeah,
of your.
we all like liquidity, we're entrepreneurs, we like
Yes.
money in the bank, right? And
Sure.
showing it up for 10 years is never going to be a good tax.
Sure. Well, yeah, and that's the challenge there. I mean, I would say direct indexing or do some tax loss harvesting might help with that, but that's probably as good as you're gonna get in terms of tax avoidance.
Well, and do remember, just in the ESOP, you're converting to a capital gain. And the ESOP, the payment to the ESOP is fully tax deductible, so that's sheltering income already. So you are converting a stream of ordinary income into a capital gain. So that's pretty tax effective already.
I know. It's the capital contribution component that I'm focusing on saying, how do I keep as much of my liquidity as possible?
Well, obviously, I don't think there's any simple tax for you to keep the beneficial ownership of that capital and pay less than a capital gain rate on that.
I have the smartest people in this room, how do we not? All I hear is problems and no solutions.
You just don't want the solution, which is armed revolution, so.
So, the other thing is pay your accountant more. Whatever you pay is fully deductible, so.
At some point, you pay your criminal attorney at
That's funny, yes.
You see how many heads are in my pot of capital yards that I pay my accountants and my
Give me
attorneys
this.
and the IRS. I have nothing left.
Well, the idea would be net to you would be higher because you're working with all those people. So,
So we're selling hopes and dreams.
yeah, unfortunately, you are going to have to pay taxes at some point. Regardless, if you're making money, you're probably paying taxes somewhere down the line.
Is there no different structures to that structure where you're not necessarily having the same tax consequence? You answer questions, I'm just not questions.
Yeah, I think for you, that's you're already in the best model for you, which is your bank capital gains instead of income. And I don't think for you it's going to matter whether it's in a trust or paid to you personally.
You heard of a place called Puerto Rico?
I was about to say, we could offshore it, but he doesn't want to go there.
You can't. I mean, that's
Well, but there's, I mean, but like, if you're serious on
Yes,
that,
of
like,
course
right,
I'm
there's the
serious.
Isle of Man, you could go Wiley Brothers, you could
But,
try to,
no,
right.
I was just wondering.
I mean, you just open up on the moon, there's no IRS there. No, but I mean, at some level, there is a most efficient structure based on what your limitations are. And then everything beyond that is like, how close do you want to go to Brazil? Yes. I was gonna say the sun, but yes.
yes, unfortunately.
Sun might be.
But yeah, I mean,
No, that's the question. In South Africa, the tax consequence in a trust is significantly less than the tax consequence in a capital gain as well.
well, we need a lot.
Most of the world, most of the world doesn't have a worldwide tax regime. And so you can sign a trust outside your country of residence and not pay tax in that country. So you decide it in a low tax country. But, the United States is one of 18 countries that has a worldwide tax regime, so it's similar for us.
Are you a tax attorney and are you available for hire?
No, not a tax attorney, and I used to be pretty good at taxes, but not anymore. Right, Scott? That's right. I'm getting too old, so I'm a little bit dated. But I can help. or finding somebody to help.
Any other questions? If not, we can let you guys get back to eating.
Thank you.
Well,
Awesome. Yeah.
I'll just ask one more, a couple of other questions. I always have a philosophy here, having a tax background a little bit, but we always talk about estate planning, we always talk about it from the financial assets. And the biggest legacy you can give your kids is your non-financial assets.
Yeah.
We never spend much time on it. And you touched a little bit on the control factor. And one of the things we learned over the years, that the more control you exert over those assets, the worse impact it has on your kids rather than a positive impact. So we grew up with this years of incentive trust, where we would incentivize you to, if you go to church, you would take a bigger distribution from your trust.
Yep.
One of the examples you gave, or for every dollar of earned income, if you want to be a school teacher, the only reason you're not a school teacher, it's your dream is because the pay's low, well, we'll supplement, because that's a worthwhile career. So for every dollar you earn as a school teacher, we'll let you take $2 out of your trust, or $1. So you don't need to be a private equity jerk to make money off other people. You make it an honest one. I'm in private equity, so everybody slams towards me. And what we found is that those more or less backfire. That this control turns from an incentive to manipulation of your kids, and so it's, in some respects, best practices become established. Hey, it's your money, either give it to the kids or don't give it to the kids. But don't try to control their life, don't try to make decisions in their life based on you bribing them with your money to do behaviors that they don't want to do, or not natural to them. I'm just curious how you incorporate that into your roles in advisory.
Yep.
If we speak about areas where AI would struggle with, that's probably one of the biggest areas.
Sure. What I've seen has gone very well with some clients that are inheriting money or in the process of that is something that was put in their trust was they didn't have a mentor that they meet with about specifically managing the money, and so it's not an advisor, it's a third party person that usually is like a family relationship, and that person is saying, hey, basically how do you become a good person, not necessarily how do you manage the money. And I think having somebody like that that's sort of unrelated can be helpful, which is more like, do we have mentorship roles? And some of that becomes like human development, not necessarily financial management, that takes a pretty big part in the trust planning.
There was something along that lines where instead of controlling the outcome, it was essentially, you just have to come and take these essentially courses.
Yeah.
You need to hire an attorney, you need to hire a tax person, you need to just check the box that you sat with them, or you need to go watch X number of hours, or this year you need to go in and essentially like keep your driver's license, keep your law license, whatever. And it wasn't, we're gonna tell you what to do with it, but like, if you fuck it up, you won't have an excuse for having fucked it up. It won't be, oh, I can't believe they gave you $10 million and they snorted it all, right? It's like, no, you did adult dare, you did adult tax, you did et cetera. And that is the kind of balance between just let them have it and not, because I've got cousins that I'm the executor of their trust, and their parents have asked about that. And a lot of them are like, some of the kids are like, know they have the money and never think about it ever, and they're just doing their own thing. And then some are like, their whole lives are angled around, when am I gonna get these distributions? And the solution that they're trying to, like my aunts and uncles are trying to figure out is, how do we just have educate? Because I'm the mentor, right?
Yeah.
But they don't have to talk to me. And that's kind of the balance.
Well,
So
and I'm sorry.
Sorry, I was just gonna say, I'm listening to this conversation, I think it's so interesting, like, wouldn't this be like good parenting, like while you're alive? I mean,
Well,
When-
yes. So
I mean,
the
are
presumption here is
are
that the
we missing
parenting already
something?
went off. Yeah.
okay,
That's
Their parents
exactly.
died, I don't know. Yeah.
That's exactly where I was going with it, is, what I want to say is, in some respect, by age 25, you've sort of instilled your values, or you haven't instilled your values. But it's so funny, when we're not intentional in instilling our values,
yes.
instead of spending time somewhat with an estate planning attorney or a tax planning attorney, maybe you spend some time documenting what was important to you. How did you get to where you were? How you did that? There's great case studies that came out of Harvard that really says the most important value is how you made your money. There's a right way and a wrong way. I was at a lunch yesterday, and I ran into a long-term client, and I laughed at it. One of his first conversations with is, I don't like doing business with friends. The business is something that could always go on. I just don't want to. I don't like doing business with people who aren't my friends. It works better. To me, yes, I have a higher obligation to work harder. I have an obligation to communicate, to work better. And I just think somebody that doesn't, want to do business with friends is probably not reflecting well on their kids. My dad used to say, make every decision as if your kids are in your room. And they're watching you make those decisions. I think those are the real important lists. If we look at legacy and estate and planning for our kids' future, those are some of the questions I think we gotta ask. What values are we instilling? How do we behave? But that's what they're learning from early on.
Have you read?
And not really worry about, if you're paying the state taxes, your kids are gonna get plenty of money if they pay the full 40%.
Yeah, certainly,
At the end of the day,
certainly.
to pay your first 15 million they get.
They're gonna be all right, yeah.
How much more do they need? I think I want to concentrate on spending my time on the value piece and what I can do to instill as a parent.
Yeah, I was just thinking like a business idea for you guys, from this, I was just thinking like you could literally put together family sessions and teach families how to do this, because I do think that there's a major gap
This is what I like
in
about
that,
this.
So.
Everybody wrote
I'm
it down.
serious.
Everybody wrote it down.
Yeah.
Education,
No,
requirement
it's
for
like
trust
bring
is
your kids,
perspective.
bring your kids, like we've set it up where I have a granddaughter who's a year, and we've set up a fund for her, and at 5, we will start to go through it, and she will decide what stock she's picking, and she'll learn. And I just think that, and that's not me, that didn't come from me, but, from my partner was in wealth management, and he did this with his children, and I was like, I think it's the most amazing thing I've ever heard. So he was like, I want to do this with your grandchildren. And I was blown away, and I'm like, I love that. I wish that I had been 5 years old and my parents had sat down with me and said, what do you want to buy? Let me teach you. So it is an idea for you guys to set up, because I don't think anyone does that.
Sure. There's a very good book called Family Wealth that talks about some of these concepts. Have you read that by chance? No? Where a lot of it talks about not the money part of inheritance, but the family history and values and how to cultivate these things with your, that's roughly tied to your last name. And they have a lot of very good ideas that we'll walk through with clients. And so maybe it's not as structured, maybe we need a better job of doing this in a structured manner, but a lot of it is, having somebody like, Bill that you can trust, say, hey, I've got some questions, how do I not screw this thing up? It's also, they talk a little about having courses or having somebody actually do education. You got to go to a seminar, you got to do something to educate yourself financially. They also talk a lot about the purpose of family charities, which I always find very interesting. And so their idea is, you've got plenty of money, give a little bit of it away to start a charity that your family's gonna run, and have that charity be aligned with the values that your family has. And then let that be an ongoing teaching tool, that if that charity is around 100 years from now, your children can work with the charity, they can volunteer for the charity when they're under 18, and that can be a way that you teach them to serve and care about others. And so that's a great book if any of you guys are really curious about that topic specifically. They talk a decent amount about that, and I've seen, all of these things I think are fantastic options for how do we instill good values in a lot of times it's not your kids. Usually when you pass away, you're 80, your kids are grown, and really it's your grandkids, your great-grandkids that might benefit or might not benefit from your money.
Hey Marcus, this is Kiso. I got a question. Can you hear me?
This is a great discussion. Anything else come to mind? Any other questions, comments?
Well, I just wanted to comment.
Hmm?
I'm gonna go back to your example, you start with 5 million.
Can anyone hear me?
or 7 million.
Yeah.
But the 50 million exemption is inflated protected still, that didn't go away.
It is, yeah. I was saying 4% net of inflation, right?
Okay.
Yeah. I was just trying to give there a very practical example of
Perfect.
how people.
Yeah, I wasn't challenging you, I didn't know whether the inflation increase continued when they changed the law last summer, or whether they changed it back. So
No,
it's
still inflation
inflation.
adjusted. Yep, absolutely.
So it goes up every year. Are
Hey,
y'all
Marcus, can you
seeing
hear me at all?
flats now or not?
Yeah, I.
Can anyone hear me at all?
The hot, exciting thing to do now in estate planning, especially I think with people that currently are under the $30 million exemption, but we're anticipating them to get over that. Let's gift some of those assets to this flat now, and then start that process there, and then you can always add stuff later. So we're seeing that quite a bit. SLAT, just to give everybody an idea, is if my wife has a trust, we'll establish a trust for my wife. I can give my assets to the trust that she controls. The assets are no longer in my name, so I've already gifted them, and that would be for the benefit of our children, right, or grandchildren, etc. And so the idea is they have to be what are called non-reciprocal. So I would have a trust that my wife's assets go into that I control, and then my wife would control the trust that has my assets. And so it's a strategy that you can take advantage of your $50 million exemption while you're alive, and relatively helpful because you still maintain some level of control of the assets, but you get to take advantage of that $50 million exemption.
Yeah, the real benefit is, you get to use up to 50 million today. And so the appreciation of those slats will escape taxation. And that you effectively, now, don't think about this unless you have a great relationship with your spouse. Because there's usually a timing, there's a timing period in there where one spouse is at risk. But even when you get past that, you both end up with the same. You keep control of all the assets between the married couple.
Yes.
But it's effectively, you froze your estate at that level. So as the estate appreciates, it will avoid at least first level generational taxation. And it also, in community property estate, provides a level of asset protection too.
Absolutely. Yeah. The idea, you give $15 million, those grow to $30 million, you never get taxed on that $50 million and grow from an estate tax perspective. So, yeah. Anyways, I guess I can let us get back to mingling. Appreciate all of you for coming out. Hope this was helpful. And yeah, if you guys ever want to grab coffee, lunch, or anything like that, and talk more about any of this, would love to just connect with more EO people. And yeah, grateful also for EO for coming out and well, at least helping support put all this together, and bugging you guys with invites and calendar invites and all that. So thank you guys for coming out, and yeah, I'll let you guys get back to it.
And Emily for getting food.
Emily, yes.
Making slides.
What now?
Sometime ago,
My team's been working with us international.
I don't need international. He was talking about some.
International.